Hey guys, welcome back to the Stonefield Ranch channel, where we make information on horsemanship, ranching, and the American West available to everybody. Today we got Brandice Brown, who is a movie horse trainer. So she's trained for The Chosen, she's trained for Netflix, Paramount, Hallmark. Really cool, a lot of stories, and she's trained all kinds of animals. So she started her career in reining horse training, so we're gonna hear a little bit about that. She's done a ton of work with dogs as well, and all kinds of animals, wolves. So it was a really interesting discussion with Brandice. We hope you enjoy it as much as we did.
There's a lot of takes that go into it, and you're like, man, that take looked really good. My horse was really good, and then we'll talk about that one.
Yeah, that's...
We'll talk about that one.
Sometimes you don't use your best shots because...
They don't use the best shot of the horse a lot of times.
They don't add to the...
Yeah.
And that probably drives you crazy.
It's frustrating, yeah. There's been a couple where we've had horses that are rearing that look awesome.
Really?
And then I'm like, what? That shot didn't...
Why did we use that shot?
Yeah.
That's cool. Are we ready, Mike? We're starting to get into the meat here.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Brandice, thanks for being on.
Yeah, no problem. I'm excited to see where it's going to go today.
Yeah, you know what? That's kind of what we do here. We just kind of see where it goes. So would love to hear just about your background as a trainer, you know, not just with horses, but with everything.
Yeah.
How you got started with it, beginning of your career.
Okay. I'm gonna start with something very few people know about me, and that's when I was really little. I lived in an apartment complex, and I wasn't even allowed to have anything with legs. So I brought home a little rabbit, and I was like feeding this little teeny tiny rabbit, and we had to get rid of it because it had too many legs. Right? We could have a bird, or we could have fish. That was it. And so I was about 9 years old, and we moved into a house, and I could get a dog. And so, like, we might have had a dog. We had a dog when I was little, maybe a year old. But from 2 to 9, I was animal deprived, right? So I was bringing home cats and all these different things. And my mom would be like, no, stop it. We can't have any of it. So we finally get to where we can have a dog. And then I wanted to train the dog to do all the things I had seen on TV. Now, this is in the 80s. And so there's not a whole lot out there, but there was the very beginning of agility starting to show up. So I would go to the playground and I'd get my dog over all the playground equipment.
Sure.
We had a horse that was 5 miles away, and for a little kid, it might as well be 100 miles. Yeah. So I started to get to go ride a little bit here and there. But when I was 13, we moved to. My stepdad had a mother that passed away. And we moved into that house, and I had horses and dogs in the like right there in the yard. Awesome. And that's where everything changed. And I started accumulating more horses. My mom saw that I really had this passion, and by, I think at 15, she bought me. We had our third horse, and by 19 years old, we had 15 horses. And so my mom just realized that if I was going to rodeo queen and do these things, and we lived in Arizona, and if I was going to do that, we couldn't afford nice horses. But if I had a bunch of them, maybe we could sort through and find something that was going to work, and we'd sell off one here or there. And I went to college at Arizona State University. Okay. And so we sold quite a few of them off because I was gone, and they were just sitting there eating. But while I was there, this guy named Mike Wood, he let me become an intern for him, and he was a cutting horse trainer. And so I got to learn from him, and he'd worked for Al Dunning for like 10 years.
Was that in like Flagstaff area?
Scottsdale. So I lived in Mesa, and I would drive to his place. It was about an hour drive each way. Okay. And I interned for him for a full year on cutting horses, cow horses, and then I started taking in some, like, I had trained bucking horses for people, like they'd call my mom and say, hey, my kid's horse is bucking everybody off. And I had done that. But this was the first time where I was really learning how to train horses, learning how to do it with some finesse. Okay. And he would have me go in this corner of an arena. And I was scared to death because he'd say, just put the reins down and lope it in a circle. I was so nervous because I was so used to like riding and controlling everything. And he's like, he's got to learn to follow the fence. So follow the fence and then guide when he's off the fence. Follow the fence, guide when he's coming off of the fence. And it took me out of my comfort zone. It was the first time I learned how to correct a stallion. And the way that trainers correct stallions is it's not always something everybody's going to be comfortable with. You know, sometimes they're going to take them and they're going to pop them with a lead rope in the front leg. Some do belly, some do the nostril. And for me, you know, I had never corrected a horse like that. And I had to learn how to get his stallions to the round pin, work the stallion and get it back over so that we could
keep it focused the whole time.
Yeah, and not get, you know, slapped by a front leg because stallions are an interesting thing. If they realize that they're in charge, they become more in charge. And so, you know, when you're working with ones that are highly bred and have a lot of energy, you have to make sure they know their space is not beside you. It can't be in your bubble. And so he taught me all of those things.
That's, so there's a saying out there, you tell a gelding what to do,
Yeah.
you ask a mare what to do, and you negotiate with a stallion, right?
Yeah, negotiation with a stallion isn't always, and some of them, I've had wonderful stallions. Some of my reining bred stallions have been the kindest, gentlest, nicest horses. But because I also got, there's always these clients who don't want to geld it yet.
Yeah.
And so you work through those and you learn how to control one until you can either get it as gentle as you can get it for them, or you can convince them they should have neutered it. Yeah, one or the other. So
the other phrase is stud horses are like governors. There should be about one per state. That's
you know, and because I did reining horses, after I left Mike Wood, it was hard. I got a job. I had to do like a real job because I thought, like, I'm not going to be able to make a living as a horse trainer, so I better go get a job. So I'll just train horses on the side. I'll do a couple for myself or something like that. So I did various different jobs. I was a park ranger, mounted police park ranger. So I got to go through mounted police training.
Where was that at?
In Tempe, Arizona. That was my first job out of college. Then I was a realtor, and I sorted through all these different things. I became a dog trainer for PetSmart. I did that for like a year.
Cool.
And that really is what has helped me most in film. I would say what I learned in my cutting horse stuff with Mike was really helpful for my own horses. But when I learned how to train dogs and aggressive dogs, and I asked the guy that was training us, he says, if you could pick any one thing, what would you like to get good at? And I said, I don't want to be afraid to take an aggressive dog in my class. And he says, okay. So he taught me how to use equipment like a gentle leader, which is a special kind of head collar for a dog, so that you can control an aggressive dog, close his nose and things like that, and have it in your class with all these other dogs and help to like rehabilitate dogs most people couldn't take.
So what would you say, why do you feel like that was a game changer for you to start with the dogs versus the horses?
It's in public. It's training inside of a store in public. You have 8 to 10 people minimum staring at you all the time while you're in a class.
It's kind of high pressure.
Yeah, and so every day I remember I would think, okay, today is sit-stay day, and I got to get everybody's dog in the entire class to sit and stay for at least, a certain amount of time, and then over the next week they'll get however many more seconds we're hoping for, depending on the age group of the dog. Okay, when we would get to downstay week, I remember thinking, oh, I think I'm going to be sick. And it was just always because I have to get every dog in the whole class to lay down. And if you have not ever trained like a dachshund, a wiener dog, to lie down on a hard, cold surface, you don't know the amount of stress that a bulldog, and I mean like a Frenchie or a traditional bulldog, not a pit bull. But some of those dogs are like, I'm not okay with this surface. And so you had to come up with creative ways. I remember this one, it was so cute. This one bulldog did not want to walk on concrete floors in PetSmart. And so we would be trying to get it to walk, and it would just lay with its belly on the ground and legs to the side. And the owner's like, should I drag it? What should I do? Most of the time, you kind of drag a dog maybe 2 or 3 steps, and he says, fine, I'll get up. This dog's like, I'm okay with it. You can just drag me. It didn't care. So we would stand it up and then, try to get it to go. It would lay back down. We'd drag it a little bit. And we got that dog to be able to do everything all the other dogs could do. And it was just consistency and finding the right snacks and teaching the owner not to bring it with a meal already in its stomach for the day. Let's bring it hungry. Let's try to find something that it will crave to get up and do. And being able to do those sorts of things to find what does this animal want and what does it find value in? Because with horses, everything's just do it. It's push and pull, right?
Yeah.
And with a dog, it's trying to get him to willingly do everything you want with a treat, to ask him to do it that way. And then if he won't, there are some things that you use, like the gentle leader. You might hold it up in the air to make the dog go into a sit if he says, I don't want food today. But you're trying to do everything in a different way. It's all with a reward. Yeah. Instead of a reward of, with a horse, your reward is often rest. With a dog, you've got to talk to his stomach or something he finds high value in. Is it praise? So those kinds of things I thought were really helpful in training all the different animals that I've trained. I kind of stopped doing horses professionally, more than 10 years ago. My first son was only about a year old, and I went to nursing school because I thought, I really want to be able to pay someone else to train the horses for me because I want to I can get to this level on my own. I've been able to train horses to go to the Palomino World Show and make the top 5. I've even trained one young kid's horse won the Palomino World Show in the cutting that I trained. And it was one that they bought at an auction and were told he's not a good cutting horse, he's not gonna make it, And I said, well, there's a level for each horse. There's a level that each horse can compete at. And he could do everything okay. So instead of trying to compete at the AQHA World Show, we took him to his level, which was the Palomino World Show, and he won. Yeah, so you just had, that kind of stuff was really cool to do, but then I wanted to get above those levels. So I went and worked for, I found a guy that was a Futurity horse trainer. Okay. And I went to work for him, and it was interesting because this guy, he had done really well with that, and he had all these dogs. And what do you do with your dogs? And he said, well, I'm a national champion hunting dog trainer. And he says, I want to eventually move to doing that. Well, he has now. That's Talmadge Smedley, and he used to train reining horses, and now he focuses more on dog training because there's a lot of money to be made in pet dogs that need help.
Is there just more money in it? Is it just because more people have dogs?
More people have dogs. Okay. And more people, so people are not growing up learning how to work with animals anymore. Yeah. It's really a dying industry. And so you need people who have animal experience to come in and teach these guys, how to correct your dog and how to stay consistent and disciplined throughout the family. Yeah. I have a family member that I get a kick out of it because get this dog, move this dog, move the dog yourself. I'm always saying, move the dog yourself. Because if I am always moving the dog is not going to move for you. If I tell the dog, get out of there, the dog's going to get out of the room. But if you don't teach the dog to leave your room or your presence or your bubble, if you're not teaching it, the dog's going to keep thinking that I'm the only one who can correct it or tell it what to do. So it's going to respond when I'm in the house. But what are you going to do when I'm not in the house? What are you going to do when you're outside or something and it's bothering one of the horses or whatever?
Well, this is a topic that I think is really good because, and one of the reasons why I think it's so important to maintain this lifestyle is just for the confidence that it gives my kids. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons. So my daughter's got a little mini Australian Shepherd that we got her. My cousin Brady is a rope horse trainer and breeder, and I was over at his house riding with him, and he gave me this Australian Shepherd, and I brought it home. Much to my wife's disagreement.
Yeah.
But in the long run, I mean, my daughter, she walks that dog twice a day.
Yeah.
She's out with it all the time, just learning to take care of another animal. Right now it's sick and has some pneumonia, so she's now having to kind of doctor it and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just like the confidence that she is building by doing that. And
Yeah.
then she's got a horse too that, I mean, she's developed some confidence on. And so I kind of lament kids getting away from that lifestyle. I kind of fight it a little bit.
My poor kids. So this is something that we say all the time in our household is like, when you turn 2, you get your first shovel and you start learning how to work. At 2 years old, they have those little plastic shovels for kids.
Yep.
And it's amazing. Kids want to do all the things we're doing, right?
Yep.
If you're in the house, a kid wants to learn to sweep and clean. Later on, they're not going to want to do those things. Take advantage of it while the little kid wants to learn to do it. It is a lot more work to teach your kid to help you clean a stall than to just do it yourself. It is so much more work.
Takes way more time.
Yes, and patience. But if you do it, your kid learns how to work, and your child will be able to. We have a church group that my kids go and help to clean people's yards and do things, and you wouldn't believe the amount of compliments I've gotten from the time my kids are like, one of them's 14 right now, but from age 10, 11, when they would go do that, people would say, he's such a hard worker. Like, he knows how to use tools. He can cut limbs. He's dragging limbs. He didn't even bring gloves, and he said, I don't need them, and he's just doing the work, and he's not complaining, and he stays happy throughout it. And I'm like, man, if he can do that at home, that'd be great. But you've taught the kid how to work at least, and other people are seeing the value in them being able to do work. And now he gets hired to go help out at one of the neighbors has an orchard, and he can prune trees and help drag limbs and do all these things. And the guy pays him what he pays an adult, because he can physically do labor, and he doesn't get lazy and get out his phone and start looking at things.
How much more valuable is that than kids being inside playing video games? I just look like when you drive along the Wasatch Front in Utah, it's like Ogden down to Provo. They're starting to build these really huge homes on these 1/8 of an acre lots, and you get like 2 strips of grass and the rest is concrete.
Yeah.
And I just think, man, how are your kids gonna learn?
Well, they got to get out and move.
Talking about,
Yeah, they got to get out and move. So I tell my kids all the time, I have treadmills in the basement. I have a dog treadmill and a human treadmill in my basement.
That's awesome.
And it's because, and my kids even know, like, if somebody's really cranky or having a hard time with something, sometimes I'll say, go lunge yourself. Go downstairs, get on the treadmill if it's too cold, or let's go for a run. Let's go do something outside. Are you going to ride a bike? Are we going to run? Are we going to walk a dog? Can we go do agility? What can we do to get them moving? Because I have boys, and boys are completely different than girls. They need to exercise. They need to get their body moving, or else there's too much testosterone and they'll be like play fighting, which turns into real fighting. Right?
This is totally foreign to me because I grew up with 3 sisters and I have 3 girls now. So I am like, I don't know anything about boys, really.
Yeah, boys are
3 brothers, 0 sisters.
Boys are rough.
Oh, yeah.
And they play rough, and not every day, but every week for sure that they're going to play rough. But if you have all these outlets for them, it's the same thing for the dogs, right? I'm not going to have my border collie sitting in a kennel all day and then expect him to go be good outside while I'm riding my horse. No, that's livestock, and he's seeing it move. So I have to teach him how he acts around the horse, and I have to teach my kids how they are supposed to be in my house. If you have this energy, or if you feel this coming up in your body, can you jump on the trampoline? Can you go for a run? What can you do to notice that you're having this, and then how can we fix it, rather than take it out on your brother?
Yeah, it would be so interesting, and there's not a ton of research or studies out there, but I actually think that this holds up for not only people, but animals as well. When you're in shape, when you're fit, you just mentally you feel better.
Yeah.
I took on kind of a problem horse for a local rancher here. He had put this rancher in the hospital with broken ribs, and then this guy had a couple of girls just putting time like young teenage girls putting time on this horse. And, you know, I took him on, and I'd been riding him for a couple weeks. I hadn't worked him real hard. And then we were trailing up by Evanston. There's a 35-mile trail we do every spring and fall. And I went to kick him into a lope, and he came uncorked. And and it totally caught me off guard because I'd been riding him 2 weeks without a problem. But he just didn't I don't think he felt good. I think he was just so out of shape, and so mentally he's just kind of I think horses and dogs, and people, we all do better when our bodies feel good and when they're fit. I actually think that was kind of the main problem with that horse. That he's just been out of shape. He's been a pasture pet.
Well, that's something that we had one the other night that is, it's a 5-year-old. He's usually no problem to catch. You go in, you get him out of his stall, it's no big deal. But my husband uses him mainly during hunting season. Mm-hmm. Hunting season ended over 30 days ago. I pulled his shoes, which means no one has taken him on a trail ride. Yeah. He's been in a pen, which is, he's 20, 30 foot by 16 foot. And that's what he's been in. So I let him out into an arena, 11 o'clock. At 5 p.m., 6 hours later, I went out to get him, and he's like, "No, I don't want to be caught." Really? You aren't thirsty? You aren't hungry? I'll come back in an hour. I'm not going to chase a horse around. I'll come back in an hour. He still didn't want to be caught. And now he's flagging his tail, and he's running around, and I'm like,
snorting, head in the air.
It's black outside, it's dark, and now he's really intense. I'm like, really? This is a horse that hunts in the mountains. He sees everything. I told my husband, go with your headlamp on and try to catch him, because it's probably that I don't look like you do when you're hunting. Yeah. And he goes out and he says, "No, I didn't work." He says, "I thought it was going to work too." So I said, "Well, we'll go tag team it in a little bit. Let him sit another hour." So we go out. It's 8 o'clock now. And we did. We just kind of circled him around. We have a great big arena. Yep. So you can't go out there with one person and just lunge a horse. So you have, everybody spread out in the arena so he can go a couple laps around, and then we change his direction and go the other way, controlling the feet, right? So it's pretending like it's a round pen. We're going to control those feet, not just to get the horse tired. We want him to start thinking he's going to turn in and face the human and then walk in and catch him. Yep. But I wasn't going to do that by myself and lose at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, it's hard to do that in a big arena, for sure.
When you have a 200-foot length of arena you have to run, I'll be more tired than he is. Yeah. So it's I'll wait till I have some assistance and we'll come out and do this, which is nice when you have a spouse that my husband is he's really good with livestock.
Is he?
Yeah, so he understands horses. He used to start colts for Jim Montgomery. Do you ever hear about him?
I've heard of Jim Montgomery.
Yeah, he was a Utah reining horse trainer. He lives down in St. George now. Okay. Yeah, he does cow horse, I think, now. Cool. But so he learned from him. So he's really good at starting a colt. He's really good if I've got one that I do my own show horses most of the time. I might send him out when I'm in the middle of a film and I have to be there a lot of days. Sometimes I'll send my show horse out to a guy in Idaho who does a fantastic job keeping him up. But what's really cool is when I'm trying to do it on my own, I'll say, I can't get this hip over like I'd like to. And he'll go out, my husband can get on one and he can get the hip. He's got,
figured out.
Well, it's just that he's stronger. For a female not to say that men have so much more body strength is just, I just can't fathom that, because they can pick up, I can carry a 50-pound bag of feed, but I can't get to. I can, I know my limits.
Either, to be fair. Maybe
I know my limits,
with three
though.
Sisters.
Yeah, that's what it is. But there's just certain things. He's got a much stronger leg than I do. And he can put a leg on to a horse and just continue to apply pressure until the horse gives. Yeah. Where I might give before the horse can. I might get so tired in trying to roll or move or I do a lot of different things with my feet. So sometimes you're pressing, right? Yep. Sometimes you're scooping I tell people to pretend like there's a spoon on the back of your foot, and scoop some ice cream out of the horse. So
Yeah,
sometimes you're doing
you
that.
Pick up their shoulders and
There's different things you're doing. Sometimes you roll, sometimes you press. Sometimes your leg says, I can't do it one more second.
Yeah.
His never says that. He's so much stronger than I am. And it's not about pulling the face harder, it's about getting the body. And he can get the body easier than I can.
Well, it's probably good. You guys probably have a good little team then, where, you know, if colt starting's kind of his thing, and then you've done a lot of the finish work, you know, either for your movie sets or for your reining horse, your show horses.
Yeah.
You know, so that's probably a pretty good team.
Yeah, it works out really good.
To finish him because colt starting's more my jam.
Yeah, I much prefer the finish work. I like to. He'll get through riding his colt. He's got a platinum vintage right now, and he'll get through riding. And he's like, "Can you get on him for a few minutes?" Because he knows I'm going to sit and nitpick something.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get on there and I'm going to say, "Oh, he's not crossing his foot over right," and I'll just sit and fiddle with that one thing, and get it just a little bit better that day. But because that's what I'd rather do. I don't want to. With colt starting, you're just trying to get miles on them, right?
Yep.
Good, calm, gentle miles.
Yep.
And I can sit and just work through getting that stop from 20 foot to 30 foot. Something like that. I like doing those sorts of things. And what is it going to take? You know, we run down there. Are we plowing enough at the front end? Where did I feel a horse stop trying in his body? What can I do to fix that? And that's what I really like to do.
Yeah, I'm learning that. I mean, colt starting, it seems like even now, I got a horse finished, and then it goes to my daughters, and then they start riding it. You know, and ultimately, that's what I want. You know, but it means I don't get to ride broke horses very often.
Yeah.
Because to me, they're not broke until they're like 5 or 6, maybe even 7 years old, and they're just dialed. Right?
Yeah, the ones my kids get, so my kids get the opportunity to get on 2 and 3 year olds. Not before I ride them for the day, but after I'm done riding them, and I think the horses, none of mine really want to buck or anything that I'm going to put my kids on. Yeah. They don't want to rear, they don't really want to fight about anything. They're these really nice, well-bred, either Friesians or reining horses. They don't have much fight in them. They don't really get spooked about much by the time they're warmed up. And then your kid sits on and rides that around while I ride something else. So my kids get that experience. Plus, we just started to get show horses. I had a couple that got just weird things where I had some horses pass away that were right at the point ready to show. And so we were just starting to get checks. And then we had one that had a stomach rupture, which I didn't even know a horse could get.
I didn't either.
So you take one in to get it oiled, thinking you're helping it, and if they use a pump to put it in rather than gravity feed, it can pop the stomach.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, me either. I learned the hard way.
So this last year, I lost my 5-year-old that I had just like finally coming around. And he was hard to start. He was really hot. I went to Oregon to get him. Beautiful bay horse. He was a son of a horse called, we call him Shiner. He's Shining Spark. Mm-hmm. Anyways, just a really hot horse, and he foundered so bad.
Oh, really?
And I don't know, he was just on grass.
So a lot of Shining Sparks colic. I thought for sure going to say he colicked. He foundered.
He didn't colic, but I took him to the vet, and they were like, ooh, his coffin bones had rotated on all 4 feet, and this horse, he didn't want to get up, and he said you can probably do some amount of repair on this, but where he's at, and he said I can actually tell from some of the other things I'm seeing, he's actually probably foundered or multiple times.
Yeah, interesting.
So, and he was only 5, and I mean, he was one that just stays fat on grass, so I tried to not really feed him a whole lot else. So anyways, it's hard to lose those ones, especially when they're just getting to that point where you're like, they're getting good, you know? Yeah,
that's what my husband said. 2 of them that we've lost we've been married for 16 years, and 2 that we've lost in the 16 years. He's like, I still can't wrap my head around why. Both of them were horses that we used in our film business. They were ones we could put other people on. There's horses, when you get to a film, There's always horses that only wranglers ride, and a wrangler is like a term that you use if it's someone who is paid horse help or animal help. That's an animal wrangler, okay? And so we have horses that are for the wranglers and horses that are for the actors. And the ones that are for the actors are just more calm, dead to the world, right? And so we need that because they're going to walk up with big lights and they're going to put it right by your horse. You got a horse and carriage. I have a friend named Mike Hyde who comes and helps us do some driving. Okay. And he had this horse first time on set ever. It's 3 years old. It's driving single. He has a buggy on it. And they come up with a 4x4, which is a big square of cloth. And they bring it right by the horse's head like this, and they set it up. And that horse was, I remembered being like
some wouldn't take that
100 feet or more away and thinking, oh no, as I'm watching it walk, they're not unraveling it there, like they're walking it up to his face. And she just stood there. And I thought, oh, thank you, Mike, for having your horse ready to come to work today. But that's the kind of stuff we have to do. I've had them come in and make 8x8 or 12x12 walls right by your horse. So you've got your horse standing there and like, well, we need to change the light. And so they come in and they make this great big tarpy wall that wind blows against. Now your horse has to tolerate being there in that spot. Scene has to continue to look the same. Yeah. He can't do this the whole time, cock his head and
be watching and snorting.
Right.
Yeah.
He needs to act like it didn't bother him. And we have one. He's been working in the film business probably 6 years. And he still spooks from umbrellas. And they bring umbrellas over to shade your actors. He's a wonderful horse. He's had actors on him. He's had wranglers on him. Usually we don't put actors on him unless we ride him down first because they bring umbrellas over. And they pop an umbrella right by the horse and they hand it up to the actor. They don't care what part of the body they pop it at. Yeah. They just pop it. Yeah, and every time he does this, I don't care if you pop that umbrella 20 times for 10 days in a row, he will continue to flinch. Well, they're just horses that are like that.
And I'm sure you run into this on sets, but I just notice, you'll inevitably, if you're out in wilderness areas, you're going to run across people on foot or on bikes or on dirt bikes. There was a time when I think most people had been around animals or horses or livestock enough to know that, like, hey, I got to just kind of settle down here. And now they don't. Like, now these e-bikes, like, you'll be in areas and these e-bikes will come blowing past you at 25 miles an hour, and my horses have been pretty good, but I was out on a ride with my daughter, and she's 8, and I guess she was like 6 at the time. This guy blew right up the side of her, maybe 5 feet away. Oh, this is a horse that he's a little spooky on the ground. He's really broke, but he's just kind of watchy. And fortunately, he didn't do anything. But people don't have that intelligence anymore.
No, and I do dangerous things kind of with my kids. So my son was.
I like where this is going.
My son was 8 years old, and it's winter time. And there's we live in Utah, right? There's not a whole lot of places to ride. So in the wintertime, you've either got to go to a county fairgrounds and buy a pass, or you've got to find some neighbor that's willing to sell you a pass to their place, or you're boarding your horses somewhere, which can get pretty pricey. Yep. So one of the things that you can do, or there's some racetracks that are maintained during the wintertime. One of those is in Ogden at the Golden Spike. And the footing's pretty fair. You can lope around on it because they come out and they actually run their race horses all winter long on that track. And
I know that.
Oh, I know you're gonna steal my spot, huh?
No, out there. You might see me out there.
It's a good place to go run, and it's so big that and it's wide, and so you can be working on one end and they're working the race horses. It's no big deal. And I thought, the Frisian's really big, and she was 3. And both of my horses are pretty gentle, but I'll put my son on the Rainer, that's 3, and I'll ride the Frisian, that's 3, and we'll just use the outside of the track and walk around and lope and stuff. And he loves to go fast, so it's a good way that we can get there and run.
Kind of open them up.
Yeah. Well, most of the time, they're just kind of loping along slow with the race horses. We get on the straightaway coming down in front of the stands. And I remember feeling my stomach drop because I heard him turn the horse loose, the guy that's coming. and I can hear that horse pounding the ground as it's coming up behind us. And I'm thinking, oh, what are these 2 3-year-olds going to do? They're really nice horses, and I'm already using the one in the Frisian in films. She's pretty mellow-minded, but what do I do if my son's horse runs off, or what's going to happen here? And that thing ran past us, and granted, it was probably 15, 20 foot to the left of us, but neither one of our horses bolted or felt the energy from the other one. I mean, I felt my horse move a little bit, maybe start to pick up to jig, and that's it. And that other one, and right away I was like, thank you, Lord, because that couldn't have been, thank you that the horse was trained well enough, and that I put him on the right horse for him, that it took care of him in a situation where it could have wanted to run with that other horse full blast as it passed us, continued on.
I mean, on a 3-year-old, that's impressive. That's really impressive, because most 3-year-olds, they're going to really, they're a little less mentally mature, and they really watch other horses.
Yeah. By the time my horses get to 3, I'm committed. I spend, it's cold, and I suit up all winter long, and I go ride them. I'm an Arizona girl. So for me to want to go out, okay, on a film, I wear full hunting gear. And I show up and they're like, whoa, because I am in full hunting gear, but I am ready to stand outside in the cold. Yeah. And then when I go to ride my horses, I'm in snow pants and it looks like I'm going snowboarding, and I step out and go get my saddle because I'm prepared to hang in for the day. I've got to be able to make it till I can get everything rode.
So when you're, what have been maybe some of your favorite sets you've been on? And maybe some of these you can talk about, maybe some of them can't. But what have been, and maybe you just talk, maybe you can just share.
I'll share a little bit about, I do a couple different kinds of things. So we have dog projects that are commercials and film work. And then we also have livestock projects. So I'll separate them into that, because most of the time it's not the two together. It's occasional. But so we'll do a lot of work for Hallmark, Netflix, Paramount with dogs.
Okay.
And they'll call me up and they'll say, we want a small dog to, one that we did was kind of cute for Hallmark, and it was called Holly and Ivy. They wanted a small dog, and they wanted it to be able to be like a puppy that this family, it gets into things. It's always in trouble. It's always getting into everything. So I had to teach the puppy. Luckily they gave me enough time. Films sometimes call you 2 weeks before. And so then you have to find a dog that's trained to do most of it already. But this one, they called me 2 months in advance. I was able to buy the puppies and train them for everything they needed for the film and have them ready to go when we show up. So
training puppies to mess stuff up.
It was really fun.
How did you pull them out of that?
So we did. Well, I trained one dog to be I bought 2. I trained one Cavalier King Charles to be the good dog. Okay. It walks on a leash good. It has good manners. You can hold it. It's always good. The other one was this silly-hearted, darling dog that had so much energy that I let her be the wild one. And so I taught her how to get into a bag and get out Christmas ornaments and drag them around the house, and how to dig into stuff. And she was able to pull and run on a leash. So every time in the movie that the dog is running off, it's Kate. And every time the dog is being held still, it's Charlotte. And so that we had these 2, and that way we could get everything we needed out of them for the film, because one puppy to always be well behaved is it's easier to tell one you can behave here and you have to behave all the time than it is for me to tell one now you can be wild. They're like, wait, why can I be wild?
Yeah,
and why?
Have a hard time.
Yeah, it was easier to just have one that barked and was wild and one that wasn't. So doubling dogs, I do that quite a bit. I have some Irish setters that I double.
Okay.
So they're both trained to do similar things, but maybe one will downstay for an hour if I tell her to. She'll lay on a table. She could be hanging off the table, and she'll look at me like, is this okay? Yeah, you can do it. We're not going to let you fall. The other one, No, she's got a 3-minute downstay, and after that, she's going to creep over to you. She is.
What is a downstay?
Downstay. So anytime that you tell a dog to be in a certain position, they have to stay in that position. If I give them a flat hand stay, they can't change positions.
Okay.
So if you're in a downstay, if you wake up, you fell asleep, which my Charlotte does a lot of times on films. She'll fall asleep, and she'll wake up and she'll like one-eye me, and and I'll just give the hand signal. Okay, I'm here for a while. So it's teaching them that you're there until I come over to you, and then I ask you to get up and release you. If I put you in a wait, I'll use a 1-finger wait, and then I'll call you to me. But I won't say the word stay if I'm going to call you from it.
Okay, because you want them alert and watching you.
I want them to know they're going to need to leave that spot, or if they do get up and leave it, there's no reprimand really. If you're in a wait and you were standing in place for 1.5 minutes for a dog, standing in place for 1.5 minutes is a long time, or holding
That's
a
long
ball.
time for me. I don't know if I could do that.
I had a dog have to hold a ball. So this, we did a movie called The Stray, and I put him in a sit stay with a ball in his mouth. He had to sit there. The camera's filming him. A bus comes up and stops. He has to continue to hold the ball until the little boy gets out and takes the ball from him. It was almost 2 minutes of holding a ball. And this dog was just learning how to hold something for like 30 seconds. So I had to spend a month getting him to the point where he was at a 2-minute hold for that, so that when the bus drives up, he wouldn't drop it. Because it's just a certain amount of time that your jaw says, oh, I'm done, right?
Yeah.
And so it's things like that that we're getting them ready for the film. And then, so you read the script and you get an idea of what they want. And then you overtrain.
How much do they usually give you on the script?
If I really love when I get to work with some of the UPMs that know me, and they give me a month, because then I have to locate the dog, because it's not always something I have. So I have to locate it, and then I have to help the person get it trained to do everything it needs to do for the project. When they'll give me that kind of lead time, I can usually do a really great job.
So do you have a network of people that might have the dogs you're looking for?
Yes.
Or you just
Yes,
go and
I have other dog trainers that I call. I don't generally, it takes me a lot to say I'm going to put an ad out on Facebook and look for a dog, because there's a lot of liability for us to take a dog to set. If this dog is dog aggressive and someone else is walking their dog, I can't control what other people are doing when we're on set. It might be a closed set, but I can't stop that guy from walking his dog through the neighborhood today. Someone else might be able to shut him down or move him, but he doesn't have to. He could choose to just go through the set if he wants to. If I have a aggressive dog there, that's not going to work. What if I have children? What if I have a kid in a back seat and he's going to snuggle and lay on the dog? And we're going to do that for 14 days as we travel and do different things. This dog better be a saint, because he's going to have to tolerate. People think their dogs are all so wonderful and tolerant.
It's like horse people. Everybody rides the best horse. And
Yeah, but you put him in a situation where he can't get away. He's trapped in the back of the car with them.
Yeah.
And he has got to be just the best natured dog you can find. And so sometimes it takes some time to find dogs like that. And then we get these other calls. So I did one that I really liked a couple of years ago. It just came out this year. It was called Best Christmas Ever. And I get the script and I'm reading through the script, and my husband's like, oh, it's one of those, because I cried on a part of it. I'm reading through the script. He's like, oh, but it's because it was such just a good-hearted family film. And there's a lot of really good parts in it. And the only thing I really did with animals, we had a cat in it, and then we had a donkey and some sheep. And we get there, they wanted me to provide a camel, and we talked about what that would. So, well, tell me about this, because it looks like we're on a stage. And I said, so you realize that a camel weighs 2,500 pounds, a minimum of 2,000 pounds, but probably 2,500. And what kind of stage do you have? Oh yeah, it's concrete. And I said, okay, so a camel costs this much. We'll get a fake camel. Okay, what else you got for animals? Because to get a camel there into a place, it's not cheap. You have to have a specific wrangler that the camel knows really well. I have to know how long does the camel have to stand up? Is he going to be able to lay down?
Know, as a like movie wrangler, you have to know all kinds of animals.
Yeah.
It's not just the horses and dogs.
It depends on if you want to make a living at it.
Yeah.
If you just want to dabble in it, then you just pick your one species. If you want to make a living at it, like our family, at least one of us kind of makes a living at it. My husband used to be able to, but he has a full-time job and he can only help here and there. And so I take a lot of dog films. We do a lot of stuff with our sheep. I have some really nice trained sheep, and I can take them places. I can take them down a city street and have them all follow me in a herd.
Wow.
And and only if we stop would one stray. As long as we're moving, they're all going to go. We've had them to the beach in Oregon. We've had, I have lots of great pictures of animals on the beach that you wouldn't normally put on the beach. But
That's awesome.
yeah, so we get to do some really fun things with them, but they have to be really well trained beforehand. So at home, at least every other year, I'm bottle feeding something. Maybe every year, I'm bottle feeding something. Because you got to have replacements. The sheep, 8 to 10 years, right, on a sheep that he's gonna live. Sometimes you can get a little longer, so I have to have bottle fed sheep that see me as mom and love me, and they want to follow me because they trust me and they know that I'm like where all the good things come from.
So how many animals do you keep at your place?
They're kind of spaced out. So I have neighbors. I have a friend in Idaho that keeps my cows.
Okay.
So my kids and I bottle fed cows, and then they trained them and used them for 4-H for a year.
Okay.
And then they're big full-size cows, and I called up a friend of mine. I said, I don't want to clean stalls for cows. It's really messy. Can you take my cows? And he's like, I'll do a deal with you. I'll feed them, and then we'll split calves. And I says, cool. So my cows live in Idaho. I have sheep that live with me and goats. I have a parrot in the basement that lives with us. My husband's probably not a huge fan of my parrot situation, but all these are different animals that I've learned how to train. I get rats sometimes for films. I've had one's really cool deal where we had a rat that they wanted to set it down by people's feet. They wanted to see it in like a jail cell. It was Peter. Peter's writing, this is for a Bible video. Peter is writing about Jesus in his jail cell, and they want to show how dark and dirty and nasty of a place he lived in while he did this. So what better than mice or rats, right?
Yep.
So we get this rat, and the rat is supposed to be put down by people's feet. So I taught the rat to come to a knock. So when I would knock on the ground, the rat would hit the wall and come around and get in my hand. And then I'd hold the little rat up and warm it up because it was a cold floor. And I'd hold it up and warm it up, and the little rat would shiver, and then it'd get warm, and we'd do another take. And I never thought I would like hold a rat to my chest and warm it. But you get to where you trust them, and it would come right over reliably every time. And every time their feet would come in, and everybody be shuffling and be like, oh, please don't let my rat get stepped on. And then a little rat would come around and get in my hand. And
that seems like it would be so hard to understand. Because like for me, we've got dogs too. I'm a much better horse trainer than I am a dog trainer. And all of their mind, like all animals' minds, it seems like could work just a little bit different. Just seeing the difference between dogs and horses, right?
Yeah.
The things that incentivize them are different. Horses are like pressure and release of pressure. They seek, the release of pressure. Dogs are more like, hey, give me an incentive here to work.
Right.
know?
And rats are similar to that.
They're similar to dogs.
Yeah.
And then like, I would imagine sheep are maybe closer to horses. Right?
But
I don't
stupider. Oh gosh. The hardest
I
thing.
wasn't going to say it.
Sheep are honestly the hardest animal. It's definitely why in the Bible they use sheep as an analogy so much, because they are great at following everyone to do the wrong thing. Like one jumps the fence and they all jump up. There can be a hole where everybody's walking. You're in a project, you're in a film, and all the sheep are walking, and one jumps an area, and there may be nothing there, and everybody jumps it. and they have to redo the take because one sheep did something and everybody thought, oh, there was something there. And so they all are jumping the same spot.
We would like to think we're smarter than sheep, but sometimes we're not. This is social media.
So I don't go to the auction and buy sheep and think I'm going to make them ready for film. When we first got into doing sheep, my father-in-law, we went out and worked a film, and I had a good working dog that I had some titles on for, and that's where it kind of like marries together, right? Is I have working dogs with titles in working sheep and cattle and that sort of thing. You can bring that dog to set and it can help you work your sheep on set when they're wild. When you get to certain areas where you don't have another handler who can help you run the dog, then you're having to run the dog and monitor all the sheep, and you're in a city street or whatever else. And for me, it was easier to just go back and bottle feed and do something different. But we did initially take dog broke sheep.
That's amazing how much work and time goes into helping these animals be ready for set. Because if you're really counting it from the time you're getting them and bottle feeding them, I mean, that's just a tremendous amount of time you're having to put in.
And even for goats, if we have a goat or a sheep that's born and it has to be bottle fed, it's never one of those things where I'm like, oh, geez, I hate this. It's like, all right, boys, here we go. This is going to be our next lead animal because it's going to love you that much. And they do. It's so cool. I have this one sheep. Her name is Whitney. I walk out in the field and I yell, Whitney! And she brings a whole flock.
That's awesome.
And it's cool.
So the level of trust that you have to have with these animals too is just off the charts.
Yeah, you get into sets and it's hilarious. We do some work with the Chosen and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on these biblical projects. And they're like, we just don't like to use anyone else's sheep. And it's because they're going to come in, they're going to follow me. If they get away from somebody, it's no big deal. It really isn't like, we'll get it. They're probably going to come to me as soon as I talk. And so like we'll be in the middle of a city street. It's busy with all of these extras walking back and forth, and everybody's in period clothing. Period means that it's for the time of the film. So Jesus's time period would be like 40 AD or before, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so they're dressed in the robes and things like that for that period. And it's just, I had a ram who wanted to like go after a guy's robe. He keeps walking in front of him and the ram's he's just kind of doing this. And I told my kids, I said, I had one of my sons there. I said, we got to go put him in the trailer. He's going to get that guy. and he had never, ever done that before. But when they do that, then it's time to trade out rams.
So that's, so my question for you is, how do you, because it sounds like you might get a movie project where they say, hey, we want to use an animal that you may not have worked with before. Mm-hmm. So how do you assess how that animal thinks and do kind of your research and background, or do you try to read, kind of background on that animal before, or do you just kind of watch them and start to assess, hey, here's how I think I can get a job done?
It depends on what it is. So let's say that we have a horse that needs to walk into, or cow. I've had horses and cows both in concrete surfaces in buildings. And the first thing I ask is it a polished concrete floor or unpolished? Can you get me rubber mats that line the entire walkway for them to get to where they need to go?
Yeah, polished concrete on hooves is no good.
Are we going to stay on polished concrete? Are you willing to pay for special shoeing if we are? Or can the horse have rubber mats? And so some of the times we've been able to do some boreum shoes, or they have this special kind. Oh, what's it called? I can't think of the terminology right now. I just have to look for them on the internet and buy them. But they actually have some little brassy looking spots underneath them.
Okay.
And that helps grip on certain types of concrete. It's great outdoors. It does not work on polished concrete. I had a gentleman who has done a ton of work in parades, and he's like, oh, it'll be fine. It's going to be great. That's all you need. And I still told them to have the mats. And I was so glad I did, because my horse was definitely sliding on the polished concrete. Everything was great while we were outside, but when we got into the inner floor. But I also, if you think about taking a horse into a building with walls and sheetrock and everything, you know, a horse hitting sheetrock is just going to demolish it. It has like a concrete wall, sure, but sheetrock is going to just go into powder when a horse bumps it.
Yep.
So those kinds of things, you have to take the gentlest animals you can find. It has to be something. I have this one Frisian that we used on some Utah commercials for, what's that for? Scammers. And she had to go into buildings and different things, and she's going to be like in a restaurant. And so we had to get her special shoes. We had to make sure that all the rubber was down the whole way in to where she needed to go. And then she's going to be on, we have to talk about all these surfaces, right? We're going to be on linoleum. We're going to be on polished concrete. We're going to be on asphalt. We're going to be on regular concrete. We're going to be on grass, so that I make sure that I have the horse prepared for each place that it has to step, so that we don't have an accident.
Gosh, that's so much to take into consideration.
Yeah, and then you might spend days researching the best shoe option. You know, you call all kinds of people, you ask all the questions, you call farriers and see who's going to be able to get it done in time.
Yeah.
You may have to travel an hour to a farrier who's willing to do it for you.
Wow.
And then you hope that once you find it all out, then you present it to the film company and they tell you, oh yeah, we'll pay for that, or oh, that's too much for us. And you're like, well, there went 2 days, 2 days of time. That happens more often than you'd realize. Or there was a mountain lion that they wanted for something. First of all, they wanted a leopard. And so I'm trying to find a leopard. And it was actually really hard, because they wanted a black panther. So if you look close at a black panther, he's got leopard spots, right? So they wanted
it's just
that.
kind of a color mutation.
And there just wasn't one available. And so I said, okay, what country are we in? And so then they tell you what country, and what time frame, what year are we working with here? Because then we identify what animals would have been in that area during that time. And so then I said, okay, we can't get this. A mountain lion's going to cost you this much, a bobcat this much, a wolf this much. And they said, the wolf's in our budget. And so that's what they went with, was the wolf. And then we just tried to find the darkest wolf we could to make sure that we got the look, because they started with wanting a black panther.
What's a wolf like to train? Is it just pretty similar to a dog, or?
It really depends on who does it. If someone raises it from a pup, and they are bottle feeding it, and then they're moving it to mush, and they're taking care of it from the get-go, I have seen them do amazing work, and they are very much like a dog, and they are very much trained like a dog. And then I've had some come to set on logging chains, and I'm in snowshoes, and I'm walking it on a logging chain, and I fall through the snow, and I'm like, I'm gonna die.
I'm vulnerable.
But, yeah, you're very vulnerable. And when a wolf looks at you from where they're at on a logging chain, and you're like, are you gonna take my head off, or are you gonna be good? And
I'm still jury's still out. We're still deciding.
I had this one really cool wolf. The first one that this group gave me to walk was sketchy at best. She was young. She was nervous with her new surroundings. We get her tied into place, and I was like, oh, thank goodness I'm done walking her, because I could feel through the line how uncomfortable she was.
Yeah.
Okay. When the next day I got a trained wolf that was older, he had been in quite a few films, and when I fell through the snow, I had him. He backed away to the end of the chain and waited for me to get out of the hole.
Oh, that's cool.
And I thought, oh, this one is cool. He felt that I was uncomfortable, and he made space for me.
Picked up on it.
Yeah.
Huh.
So those kinds of things I think are always really cool.
Yeah. Welcome, Nora. She's my little animal girl. She loves them. So what's the scariest animal you've had to work with?
Ooh, scariest. Okay, so birds of prey can be kind of scary. I've been in a bite suit to get bit by a dog, and I was under a car, And the lady that trained this dog, like he slept on my bed, he listened to me, he was nice. And I got to know him for a few days before we went to set. We practiced a little bit and stuff. I'm still in a bite suit. Bite suit does not cover your foot. The dog is supposed to bite my ankle. I was a nervous wreck under the car, hoping the first time he bit, he'd hit the right spot. And he did. He bit where he was told to go. And I was just so impressed with her ability to tell the dog exactly where to bite and that he hit it. And then he comes in barking at my face, right into my face, barking. And I told him, Riker, it's me. And Mallory, call your dog. And he backed right out and went. And I was like, oh, what a great trained dog. So the next time he comes in and he bites my leg and a little lower, a little closer to the ankle, I felt it a little more. And they wanted to do I can't remember if it was on the third or the fourth take that I says, we can't do another take. And they said, why? And I said, every take he takes and he comes down lower on my leg and we've run out of pant. I don't have any more. If he bites any lower, he's on my foot. And then they said, well, can't we just go get you some shin guards or something, like soccer shin guards or whatever? I was like, no, he's a police dog. I'm not gonna roll with that. You can't just shin guard my foot and call it good.
You have like, what is it, like 600 pounds per square inch?
I don't know what it is, but I can tell you I don't want to ever be without a bite suit on it when it happens. If it can bruise under a bite suit, who wants to be without a bite suit? And some soccer shin guards did not seem safe enough to me.
So when I was in elementary school, I have this very vivid memory. They had a police dog come in and they had a guy in a bite suit. And I think this whole thing was, I think it was during Dare Week. So it was like, hey kids, this is why you stay out of drugs. This is why, you don't ever want to get chased by one of these. But they had this dog. It wasn't a German Shepherd. It was just, yeah, I think that's
the
what it was.
littler one that's real hyper.
And it ran this guy down that was in a bite suit and latched onto his arm. And it was so much force. It just like flipped him into the ground. And I was like, I'll never do drugs. It'll
when you watch them do a good takedown, it's impressive. And whether some of the dogs are taught to bite. And that's what the other thing you have to do. Let's say that you're calling around and you're trying to find a dog that needs to do what you need it to do. You have to ask, is the dog trained to go for an arm, a leg? That way that when you get to set, you know what to tell people. If the dog is trained to go for an arm, you have to tell everybody on set, don't do this. Don't walk around, don't do this, don't throw your arms around.
Elbows in.
Yeah, and if you're working with the dog at any point, don't do this. Because the dog's going to go for the arm. That's the cue for the dog to go for the arm. And that's one of the first things that one of the handlers taught me, 10, 15 years ago when I did my first police protection dog on set, was no fast movements and don't do this. And I said, explain it to me so I understand why. And they told me, and I was like, that's a really good reason not to do that. I will not be doing that. But it's things that we have to teach. If I didn't know it 15 years ago, how would the first AD know it? How would my actor know it? And so we have to get in there. We have to educate everybody as to what they're not supposed to do. If it's a police dog, there's no running on set. Why would you run if we have a protection dog? Things like that we have to kind of just tell everybody. If you're in a hurry, it's a walking hurry. It's not a running hurry.
Have you had any wrecks on set or like injuries?
We did have a lady, we were working on a biblical project, and we had brought several different, I have this dairy that's up the road from me, and they provide me with red cows that are jerseys.
Okay.
And so we go there and we get them halter broke or whatever. Most of the time they have ones that they've used at the county fair that they pass off to me to go use on film. And it works out great because some projects want a specific color of cow, and the ones I keep in Idaho are all black. And so this works out good, and I've got my red cows, and we needed a couple more. And so I called a friend. She goes, oh, we have this jersey that we milk. It's great. And I said, fine, go ahead and bring it. Well, trailer's gone to here and there. So one of my friends stops with all the other cattle to grab this one cow. They get it to set. I was not on set that day. I think I had been diagnosed with COVID. I wasn't sick, but you can't show up to set during that time frame. We weren't allowed to go to set. We were being tested every single day, and then it got to where we were tested every 3 days, and we were 3 times a week, whatever it was. But I did pop positive on a test, so my husband had to go and work this day for me. So he didn't know the cows, I didn't know those cows, and lady got stepped on by a cow. She didn't have on boots. We always wear closed-toed shoes.
Yep.
But she was going to let her daughter work the cow, who's like 16. For whatever reason, she was close to the cow. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. Stepped on her toe and removed her toenail.
Oh, ouch.
And that was probably the only one where like a Wrangler team member had anything. We did have
That's
one
not
guy.
too bad, though.
We had one guy fall off a horse. I was working, it wasn't on my team. We were working for my in-laws, and a guy did fall off of a horse. And I don't remember if it was daylight or nighttime for this scene, but we had this really cool scene that we were trying to do where we had all these horses running through the forest different directions, and it's a mob scene. So it's 1830s, 1840s Joseph Smith time.
Okay.
And we're all running through the forest and mobs shooting guns and things. My husband rides in on this dark buckskin horse. He kind of looks like a bay, but he's a buckskin. So he rides in on him. He shoots his gun, horse rears in the air, really cool, and then all the scene starts to happen. You know, there's all this commotion and chaos. And the first take of that was amazing. And the horse rears really high, there's gunfire and guns are being shot everywhere. And the rear from this horse was legit. Like, he got nervous about something and reared in this great big rear. After that, all the other ones were like much more subdued. And of course, those are the ones that make it in the film. You know, you see that when you're like, dang it, the first take was the best. It was really cool.
It's like the most real, authentic.
It was real. It was, yeah, because, and the horses were more chaotic. The people were more chaotic. And then they you know, go in and change things around so they can get a certain thing they want. And I'm like, I don't know. It was cooler on the first take.
So what's the, like, when you're working with different directors, what makes, are there, I would assume some of them are much more easy to work with as opposed to others?
There are some, and it's male and female. There are some people who are so calm and so kind and get through everything in a way that you just think, gosh, this person is a saint. There's one guy in particular I've worked with. First time I ever worked with him, he played Jesus. The next time I worked with him, he played Joseph. The next time I worked with him, he was a director, and I worked with him as a UPM. So UPM is a unit production manager.
Okay.
That's the head over the whole project.
Okay.
Okay, and I've worked with him in all those roles, and in every single role, he has just been an amazing human. And you'll tell him, he'll call you up and, well, we have to move this day, and you have to do this, and I'll just say, let me work on it. You know, let me see what I can do. It conflicts with another date. Let me move things around and see how I can, you know, lay out all my people so I can be there for you. And he's like, cool, great. And other people, you know, you might go to work with someone else who is, you have to do this. It's part of your contract. You've got to do this for us. And he just understands that you're going to make it happen. And then when he was a director, he was so kind. There was so much chaos in this one scene. We had a baby Jesus in the manger, and it was for a show that was for Light the World. And it's this, you see it every Christmas now, but it's the story of Jesus, and it goes on to show you that he's not like, the 3 wise men didn't come and see him as an infant. He was more 2 or 3 years old, and they were wanting to show it more realistically, and that he wasn't really born like in a barn, but maybe back in the back area of the hotel where the animals were. It was still in the building, but maybe they put her there because it was quiet. And it was so busy everywhere else that it was a peaceful place. And so he's trying to do all this, and there's a lot of commotion. I can't remember what happened, but somebody got really frustrated and kind of got mean with him. And he stayed so calm and so kind. And I thought, wow, no wonder they picked you to play Jesus. Because he was so amazing, you know? And then there's been other times I was in a hurry and I waited. Jonathan Rumi is a really neat guy. He works on The Chosen. And I was waiting for him because I had to get him up on a donkey and get him ready for season 4. And had to make sure he was comfortable with his donkey. And we were going to be doing a photo shoot and things like that. So I'm waiting outside of his dressing area. And I waited a while. He must have been on the phone. I don't know. I want to go home. I live 2.5 hours from set. I have these things running through my head. And I know that a lot of people get starstruck, but I really don't. And so he comes out and I'm like, okay, so tomorrow, what time do you want to meet? And he goes, hi, I'm Jonathan Rumi. And I was like, oh, dang it. It's one of those moments where you just think, oh, I'm sorry, I am in a hurry and I will slow myself down. Yeah. And I said, I am so sorry. Go ahead. and then we talked through it all and we both kind of laugh about it. But it is part of my personality to be, as part of why I can probably head some of the projects and not, I can take on the stress and I just move through it all. And I just kind of get through it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I should slow down and just wait for things. I need to be more patient. It's definitely not.
Well, you have to have some level of patience because with animals, slow is fast, But then with people, you probably are like, all right, let's get this moving,
Right. I think you always have more patience with animals than humans. They should be able to understand you.
Yeah.
What's it like working with actors on horses that don't have much experience?
It depends on the actor. Some of them, I'm spending the whole day trying to make sure their saddle's on pretty snug so that they don't tip it, especially when they're in. Most of the stuff that we do with horses, they don't get to ride in a Western saddle. It's not current projects. This is stuff where we're 1800s, we're 1500s, we're Jesus's time. We either have no stirrups or they're in like a plantation saddle, an English saddle, or a bareback pad. And so I'm just spending a lot of time trying to make sure that whatever they're sitting on is secure as possible and that they realize if they're not centered. And so
Mind in the middle.
Right. They'll be off centered and you're like, nope, I have to, you'll just tell the first AD I need to go straighten him before we do this take. And then you have him sit up and get ready again or fix one rein because they don't have their reins even or something like that. And the horse is going to start out with his head cocked sideways and it's going to get worse the farther he goes.
Yeah.
So things like that you're always trying to do. A lot of times I'm squatted down underneath a horse holding it still so they can deliver their lines. And maybe I'm under there for like 30 minutes to an hour. So you have to have a horse that's really trustworthy, doesn't want to paw you, doesn't care that you're right underneath his nose for a long period of time. And you'd think a lot of horses can do that. No, some of them are jerks.
The Frisian I got from you, I guarantee she could do that. She's like the most gentle-minded horse I think I've ever owned.
Yeah.
She's more like a dog.
So her mother, I used her in a project this summer, maybe fall, and she had to stand still as Joseph Smith's brother runs into the scene as fast as he can run into the scene, stops the horse, jumps off, drops the reins, runs over to flip his dead brother over and see him. And the horse has to stand there, take after take after take. And one of the takes in between, they were giving him a lot of instruction, cleaning him up. She stood there for 20 minutes on one take. I timed it and did not move while they did everything they needed to and got set back up again. And they would just have him run from her to there and her to there. And I'm like, wow, what a good job we have done getting this horse ready to be able to do these roles, to have one rein on the ground and stand here and just cock a hip and know I'm going to be here. There wasn't another horse for her to talk to. We didn't have another horse waiting there nearby. She did that all by herself on 2 different parts for that scene while other horses were hundreds and hundreds of feet away. Some horses just have a mind to be able to do it. Not every horse can.
Do you think it's more typical of the Frisian breed to be like that? Do you think that's why they use them on movie sets? I mean, obviously they're pretty. I think that's probably the main reason.
I think that they are. So there's what we call a warm blood. There's a hot blood, right? A traditional hot blood is your thoroughbreds, your Arabians. Right? Warm bloods are mixes, right? And then you have your cold bloods. they say that the Frisian is a warm blood, that he is a little hotter than a draft horse, but I would say they lean more towards the cold blood side. I've never had a Frisian get scared from a plastic bag and make it more than 20, 30 feet before you can talk some sense into them. I've seen quarter horses make it a long distance before I can figure out what it was that set it off.
I've been on a quarter horse with a plastic bag where we're a mile away and I'm like, hey, when you stopping, buddy?
Yeah, it's like, what was it? What set us off, right? But the Frisian, he gets tired too quick. So I think they're on that further end of that cold blood range, which makes it easier for them to rest and relax easier.
Interesting. Man, so interesting to hear how this works. So what's it been like working on the Chosen series? Like it has a lot of acclaim. It's a really popular. It's a great series. If anybody hasn't watched it, I absolutely love it. So what's it like being on set with that whole team?
They're good people. Yeah, there's shows I went on. So sometimes I'll be on a show that's biblical, and then you'll go on a show that's straight Hollywood. And a biblical show, you pray a lot of times before we get started for the day. We're going to be asking a Heavenly Father to help you with your production for the day, which is an interesting thing to do, to not say that we're going to do this, but that we're asking someone else to help us get this project done. Then you go to a Hollywood show and the lead actor and the director are saying the F word just in conversation to each other throughout the day while they're filming. And they just use it like it's a verb, it's an adjective, it's a noun, it does everything.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is so funny. I was just on a biblical project 2 days ago, you know? So you do get two completely different worlds. Utah's a really neat place to be in film because there's a film family here. And you see the same people. You can look at a call sheet. That's a form that kind of tells you everybody that's going to be on there for the day. You can look at that and you can say, oh, hey, I know so-and-so in hair and makeup. I know so-and-so is on camera today. Oh, that guy made a belt for me. Like I have a camera guy that did, actually probably the belt I'm wearing. But so he likes leather work and stuff like that. We got talking and he made a belt for me, which was really cool.
That's cool.
And then he did some shat tops and all kinds of other things. So you just talk to these people and you make friendships. One of the ladies, she told me one time, there's a person called Scripty, and they look at the script and they help people get through their lines. Like you forgot in or a or whatever in whatever you were saying, you forgot a word, and they'll recorrect you. Or they do continuity. So they're making sure that bag you had on this way earlier is still this way for this scene. And I think everybody on film is working to try to make sure that we have continuity of things. The Chosen is hilarious because the director's like, I don't care about continuity. I just want to do this. Yeah. And we're like, the rest of us like, oh, but we care about continuity. Like we have to care about it. You know, I got to get that basket that was on the donkey that sat on this side. We don't need it, but we need it. Yeah. It'll take me a second. You just start running, you know, because you want to do it and he wants to roll and you want to fix it. And so sometimes you just send somebody to go get it. And then everything's set up and you're tying it on right before they shoot because you're wanting to make sure that it matches. But for them, it's all about getting in as much as they can. When they come to Utah, the Chosen wants to get as much as they can filmed because they're paying to have so many people come from Texas to here. So every day is really, really important. It is on every film, but especially if they're on location when they come to Utah. Whereas most of our films, this is their home base, right? But they bring a huge team from out of state.
Gosh, that has to be, you have to be an incredible, you say you're not patient, but to have to balance not only like the animals you're working with, but the personality types and the people, like that has to be insane. I would probably get fired for punching somebody in the face, for being like, You'll
be surprised. You'll be surprised. So my husband told me something a long time ago that one of the first films we ever went to, he said it's hurry up and wait, but also he says, I want you to think about this. I was on a film and they came in and they built up a set right in front of us. So we've got a horse and team and we're waiting to go and they build all this stuff right in front of us. And then they call action and we can't leave. And then they come over to yell at us. And he says, but you don't tell anybody else what to do. You don't tell them that what they're setting up is wrong. You don't tell them to do anything. He says, you just wait until they call action, and then
you worry about your little portion of the set.
Yeah, and then you do your thing. And that helped me from the very beginning be able to say, okay, I'm going to take a step back from whatever my normal personality would be, which is a little bit controlling of everything, right? And I'm going to give all that control away, and I'm going to control my world. And this is what I have to do today. And that cord that my horse needs to step over, I'm going to call on the radio, and I'm going to get that covered by someone else. I'm not going to go grab anything. I'm not going to take care of that. Someone's going to move that cord for me. So there's things like that and it sounds stupid, but as soon as your metal-hooved, your metal-shod horse walks on that cord, severs it, and gets electrocuted, then we have a problem, right?
Yeah.
And they're these great big thick cords.
Yeah. Huge.
And so you don't want your horse to take that jolt.
Yep.
So there's little things like that where a lot of people just run over it, and I'm like, you got to cover that. I don't care if you put a rubber mat over it. You just have to cover it, bury it with dirt, whatever you want to do. Just change it so I can get across it and not
risk anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm all about getting rid of as much risk as possible.
Well, and you got tremendous value in these animals that you're bringing on set, too.
Right. That's what I had a commercial that called me a few weeks ago, and it's supposed to film today. And they said, we really want your horses, and we want to do this and that. And I said, this is what it costs. And they were like, ooh. And I said, well, you can get cheaper horses, but they're not going to have a mane that comes down to the edge of their neck, and they probably won't be shampooed within the last few weeks. But I said, I keep them clean. I'm able to get in somewhere in the wintertime and wash them and make them look good. And I'm going to show up with a horse that looks good. It doesn't have green stains. It doesn't look like it came straight out of the pasture. There's not going to be any burrs in it. It's going to have a nice mane, and it's going to look really cool for your commercial. And I said, but that's kind of what we provide, and it's this cost.
That's true. I'll verify. I've seen her horses. They are like beautiful. All of them.
Yeah, we try to
their
make sure
manes are always done up in braids and buns and whatever. And
they are, well, when they have babies. Those Friesians, I have to bundle it up when they have babies, because if the babies eat the ends of the hair off, then the mane's a whole lot shorter. Yeah. We have one gelding who's had his mane chewed off he's like the resident gelding, so the young ones always get to go in the pen with him. We had to stop it because he lost his mane 3 times. And he grew it so fast back out, but we were like, oh. But the babies would always find him. I'm like, okay, he's not the resident gelding anymore. We'll have to put him in with something else.
Oh, man. Well, this has been awesome, Brandice. Appreciate you having on. What would be your advice for somebody wanting to get into the film industry with animal training? And, I mean, how do you get into it? Because it's probably kind of hard.
It is. So a lot of people they think, well, I'm going to go do this. And so they go to there's a website that's for the state. That's like it's like a film commission is what they call it, the Utah Film Commission. They'll go in, they'll throw their name on there. But I've worked with some of the people whose name are on the film commission site. And the thing is that if you're going to go do it, you better bring your dog or your horse or whatever it is really ready. Because I have stood and watched dogs fail. And I'm thinking, man, your dog wasn't ready. It's too bad that they only called us for the horses on this one.
Yeah.
And it's not that, and it's not my job to tell them how to help their dog. I'm actually not supposed to, really. I'm supposed to just kind of do my own thing, just like we talked about, right?
Yeah, just worry about your side of the set.
Just worry about what you're supposed to do today and let everybody else. That light falls over, I'm not supposed to pick that light up. I'm supposed to let someone else who's in electric get that light, or a grip gets it because it's on the grip's pole, whatever it is, but it's not my stuff. So if someone wants to get involved, the very best thing is to call someone who's already doing it. Tell them what you have that's already trained. What can you add value to what they have? If you're not adding value, you have to come up with a way to add value. So you may have to go back and learn from a dog trainer, pay somebody. Maybe you say, hey, can you pay me to train? Can I pay you to help me train a dog that you can use? What kind of breed could you use? And that would do me more service to be able to hire someone because their dog's ready and can do everything that I need. Whenever somebody asks me, I always say, I've had a lot of calls for this breed. I've had a lot of calls for this breed. I only keep 3 breeds myself. And so there's lots of opportunity to get on a set once a year, probably not much more than that in Utah with a dog. But
what breeds do you keep personally?
I keep Irish Setters, Border Collies, and Cavalier King Charles.
Okay.
And it's because I have a passion for those breeds. There's something about them. One of them is it's a working dog. It's like the Irish Setter. It's a bird dog, and it's a working dog. It has something that it can do for our family. We can go out and hunt with it. The Cavalier King Charles are the sweetest, nicest, kindest little dogs I've ever worked with. I've had Yorkshire Terriers and poodles and things, and this, I just really like this little breed. And then the Border Collies, I've had Border Collies for
those are my
more
favorites.
than
That's
20
what my
years.
dog is, the Border Collie.
Yeah. I love how smart they are. I love that they can help me with the sheep. I love that when I have when my electric fence goes down and all my sheep get out, that I can send the dog to go get them if I want to. I just have to have the fence open so they bring it back to the right place. Don't like push them the wrong way. But it's nice to have the help, and the dog can help. But honestly, I have an Irish Setter that can do everything one of the Border Collies can, because I trained her the same way I did a Border Collie. And she cares more about working for me than for herself, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I love, so my Border Collie, I got him when he was 3, and he was a stud dog, and I had him cut because he was wandering all over the place. And I'm a terrible dog trainer. Like, full disclosure, you would look at my dogs and be like, oh boy. But I can talk to that dog like a person, and he learns it. Like, the second week I had him, I was going through a pasture. I had just caught a horse. My tailgate was down in my truck, and I said, go get in the truck just to see if he would. And he ran 100 yards, jumped in that truck, and waited for me. I was like, holy smokes, this dog is wicked smart.
Yeah.
And even to this day, if he hears me whistle from 2 miles away, he's full blown coming back. I love Border Collie. I always have, though.
Yeah. When I was growing up, Border Collies on the ranch were the owner's dog, and they were aggressive towards other people.
Yep.
My Border Collies aren't that way. My Border Collies love everybody. Like, my kids go to 4-H, and the lady calls my son's dog Miss Congeniality because she loves everyone instantly. So there's a way to train Border Collies from the time that they're little, or maybe it's just that I've been breeding them for so many years and I've bred it into them. But
where
my
they
dogs
can be
are
both a working dog and they can get along with people. Because most of the time people think those two can't go together.
right. And I would say healers might be a little more on the more aggressive side and don't like everybody, but there's no reason why a Border Collie can't. If you expose that dog, you take it with you a lot to meet a lot of people. I did service dogs a long time ago, and in guide dog training, it's getting 100 hands on the dog each month to get them to where they are really comfortable being in public and they don't have problems with people. And that's different colors too. You have to get them around all the different skin colors because we all have different scents from our ethnic type foods that we cook and things like that. So
That's interesting. I wouldn't even think of that.
Yeah, and I've had a dog that was that didn't like certain skin colors, and I took him to work with me a whole bunch, and it all went away. It's just the exposure to help a dog get through things.
Yeah, that's wild. Do you know what I didn't realize, actually? I was reading Janet Jones' Horse Brain, Human Brain book. I don't know if you've read that. It's really good. I didn't realize that a horse's scent is its most powerful. Like, that's how it picks up on things. I mean, I knew they had a strong sense, but I didn't realize that was like numero uno. You know,
yeah, I don't think I've ever thought about it being the number one thing.
Yeah, so she said like their scent is their top sense, and so she said like they hear really well.
Yeah.
They see okay, but they said like that's why we as people a lot of times don't understand why a horse is nervous about something when we can't see it because they're smelling it. You know?
Oh yeah, they can smell a bear or an elk long before we'll ever see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. When we go hunting with my husband, the horses know where all the animals are long before you do.
Yeah.
It's really cool to hunt with on a horse versus to hunt on foot. They're so much more hyper aware of everything in the trees.
For sure.
It's pretty cool.
Well, I like it. We talked about this with Mark Cardall when he was on. He ranched. He had a ranch that bordered Yellowstone. Mm-hmm. And I noticed this too when I'm in grizzly country. When you have horses tied up around camp, you just don't really have problems with bears. You know.
Oh, interesting.
It's like they sense it, they make noise and kind of alert you to. Mark said he used to sleep under his horse sometimes if he was nervous about something, because he said they'd alert you. And I was like, I don't know if I'd want to be woken up with this.
No, I'm trying to think which one of mine I would trust to do that with. I love my horses, but there's the first night camping in the woods, there's always somebody who keeps you up all night.
Yeah.
There's one.
I sleep with earplugs the first night. I'm like,
yeah.
You figured it out.
Yeah. It's always one of those things where you hear somebody's loose at one point during thing, somebody's untied themselves or something, and you're like, who has to go check it this time?
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Brandice, thanks so much for coming on. It's been great talking to you. You know, love kind of learning about this. It's an industry I never knew about until I came and got a horse from you. So Thanks for sharing your wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, no problem. I have a friend who calls us the land of misfit toys because there's all these different people with all these different backgrounds who may not fit into a regular job anywhere else, but they fit perfectly in film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for being on. Oh yeah. How can people learn more about your work?
Yeah.
So they can go onto our website, mikeandbrandice.com. And I know it sounds like a site for like a wedding, but it was the easiest way to make sure that we had both of our names where people could find us. Because my husband's family did this film work long before I ever got into it, probably 30 years or so before I started into film. I actually went with my father-in-law to films, and that's how people knew to call me, is I had dogs and things, and they had livestock. So you can go to mikeandbrandice.com. You can type in my name, Brandice Brown, into just about any search engine.
Okay.
And you'll find it.
Well, we'll include in the description below the video, we'll include a link to their website so you can find them there.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's great. It's a neat industry to be in, and something that I never thought I was going to do as a kid. Like, I always thought I was just going to live in Arizona in the little town I grew up in like my whole life. And now I do something completely different.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But I do have all the animals that I wanted. Everything I wanted as a little kid, I can have it. And I do. I have just about everything. I don't have the tiger, but it would probably kill my horses and that'd be a problem. So.
Oh, that's ambitious.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want one of those.
I wanted one as a kid. I don't need one as an adult.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. This has been fun.
Yeah, thanks.